You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Reddy, but my friends call me Spanners, so let's be friends. Welcome to our Qatar Grand Prix race review show. There was lots of positive things this weekend, no doubt about it. If I stray into the negative, don't think I'm going to stay there, because lots of things made me smile. Norris was nice to Piastri and to McLaren in general. Zhou Guanyu managed to smash it with Stake's first points of the season. Gasly continued that rich form that he's been showing in the last few races, and there was a surprising amount of entertainment for the Grand Prix, and I had such low expectations, so the first 10 minutes alone provided entertainment. So do bear with me whilst I say this next thing, because I don't want to get into the position where I'm hate watching Formula One. But ultimately, this race weekend was ruined. We were robbed of a good race in the end, or at least a good battle, because this was an unsuitable track drawn out over an ill-scheduled sprint weekend. Not all tracks are Silverstone, I get that, but what a weird choice for a sprint weekend. And also, it was ultimately ruined by farcical, frozen inaction from a race director thrown in at the deep end hastily at the end of a long season, with championships still on the line, not only to manage Formula One, but also 2 junior series, due to the new junior series race director being fired before her first race. So the new F1 race director was just put in a horrible position by an organisation that has lost control of the governance of Formula One. And since those last few sentences have cost me my chances of a press pass forever, can I also just add that this is a shocking dismantling of Formula One sporting integrity. It was predictable and predicted. During this process of watching the FIA president fire just about everyone from race control to the pet cat that looked at him funny, we have been able to monitor this and say, something is going to go wrong. You simply cannot fire a dozen top officials from an already stretched organisation and expect your event to run well. It was predictable and predicted. There was for some fun race cars, though. We are an independent podcast produced in the podcasting shed with the kind support of our patrons and partners. We aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. And first and wrongest among us is Matt Trumpets. Hello, Matt. Sorry I got a bit ranty.
Oh, well, that's okay. I was just going to come in with my usual, well, it looks like our experiment about replacing the race director has had a result.
But we said, this is madness, it's going to go wrong. And then instead of improving and shoring up the situation, they go and fire another race director and say, oh, you know how we've thrown you in at the deep end? Also run the junior series. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, some of the people who've left have made the point that you made, which is they're running out of human beings to do the jobs that are required. And look, even if that wasn't the case, what did you really expect when you took someone who has run junior series, where you want to be very strict and harsh about everything? You're going to get that exact same result if they haven't had the experience in the senior series.
And of course, we are going to differentiate between race control and the stewards. I think there's a really big conversation around all of that. But look, when you go around firing people, you end up with the dregs of your organization. So because I've recently fired Kyle, Alex, Brad, Antonia, they're all gone. And we're just left with Agent of Chaos, Kristian Pederson. Hello, Kristian.
Phew, I was waiting for my name in there. But you know what? I have, I suggest that maybe the next step is a prison on each track. So maybe you should isolate the drivers if they do something harsh.
Like a sin bin.
And then they could throw on like a graphics saying straight to jail, and we all Lamau or something, and Lando make the big cry and stuff. You know, things like that is what I'm looking forward to. Also, I'm quite underbalanced today, so just
Oh, yeah. I mean, what a place to start. Obviously, we'll get to all the Lewis Hamilton stuff, but since you brought that up, that was probably one of the saddest moments of the weekend, was Lewis Hamilton asking about his deficit. Like, how are we to the guys up front? And they say, well, you're 1.25 seconds a lap slower. He asks, is the car broken? Because he can't think of any other reason. Really is the car broken? And they say, no, we're just underbalanced, which is a term I've never heard before. So that's not understeery, that's no oversteery, that's just underbalanced.
You don't know what is going to happen, basically, when I say I'm underbalanced. That is what I wanted to achieve.
I thought you were going to say, oh, I'm not underbalanced. You've never seen me underbalanced.
Next week on Map.
I was going to go with he is underbalanced because we only have one agent of chaos on this week.
All right. Well, let's get on to the sharp end. So we'll have plenty of time to be sad about Lewis Hamilton towards the end of the race review. But this was definitely overawed by a single wing mirror, Matt. So what's the smallest object that's ever derailed a Grand Prix in this way?
Well, that's an interesting historical question, but this is going to come close, I'm absolutely certain. What we had was, around lap 30, the incredibly well-constructed Williams had a wing mirror just fly off down the main straight while they were attempting to pass somebody. And to be fair to Williams, they've had an awful lot of work to do in the last couple of weeks. So it's not a surprise, maybe, that this happened. Somebody didn't quite make that foot-pounds recommendation on the old torque wrench, I suppose.
Do you reckon there's one guy whose job it is to attach the wing mirror properly, and he's been dragged around having... apparently, according to Meg on The Ringer, that's the sixth... Colapinto's crash today was the 16th wreck that Williams have had this season.
Well, no, there was a 17 and 18 because Albon got into at least two more collisions on his own afterwards, which if I was a person installing the wing mirror, I'm like, well, what do you expect when you go hitting other race cars all the time?
But that's it. And I argued that actually it should count as 18, 19 and 20 because the wing mirror also collided with Bottas and punctured Sainz and Hamilton's wings as well. But look, the thing is, right, Williams, I'm sure, constructed the car just fine. They've been through the wars. It should be illegal at this point in the season to besmirch any Williams mechanics. They have been absolute legends. So the wing mirror... Yeah, go on.
Entirely in their defense, the fact that it came off the car was not in and of and by itself the problem. The problem was that it wasn't retrieved from the track before Bottas, getting out of the way under blue flags, went smash, just like Hulk. Smash. And then we got the two punctures and the safety car and the penalties. And then everybody's race was ruined because, of course, this would happen right in the middle of the pit window for everybody. So those long undercut strategies we saw undertaken,
we were really
absolutely
unlucky.
Wiped out. And then, of course, with the Norris penalty, we didn't even get something that looked like a battle at the front. It was just... could not have been I can't imagine how you could have worse timing, honestly.
Yeah, so the early safety car ruined any kind of the tire saving because it made it an easy, clear one stop. It probably was anyway, but that removed any doubt. And then the second safety car comes exactly at the point at which all the tension and drama, everyone except Russell had more or less pitted or was waiting for the correct window. Goodness knows what Russell was attempting to do.
Both of the Haas had pitted, Haas and Russell had definitely gone for the long early undercut. And then when the safety car thing happened, that was just it. There was no more strategy other than race to the end.
Spanish, you started the show with talking about the race control, race steward situation. And I find that mirror to be... It shows that we have a new race control because they didn't act as the old race control would do with this. And when I talk about the old race control, I'm talking about the Niels Vietrich, the one before this one, which would go straight to a VC or a safety car if they saw as much as an ant on the straight, right? And now they are in new times. What do we do? And they basically just let it go. And I find that I like that they let it go because, I mean, it's a mirror and it's part of the race, sort of. And then you have to avoid it. It's a race. I can see it's dangerous and stuff like that, but also a safety car for a mirror, I'm not so sure. And I think race control was thinking that too.
I'm all in favour of clearing the mirror, but I've been watching Formula One an awful long time. There's these really cool dudes and by the way, dudes is gender neutral from me because I'm a 90s kid, but cool dudes in these orange suits that just run out. And it's part of the spectacle of Formula One, Kristian, to see marshals sprint out, maybe fall down, maybe increase the jeopardy, but grab that piece and then run back. Why did no one just do that?
Yeah, what I'm talking about there is you have to think about the sport from the spectator's point of view, from the viewer's point of view. And if like a mirror on the straight has to cause a safety car and ruin strategies and all that, then you can sort of play into this. Then you can have a loose mirror. Then you can do the front wing thing on Magnussen on each race for an entire season or whatever happened back then. I mean, what is the minimum of things on track for us to throw the towel in? And I like that they sort of postponed it, sort of just watch what could happen. And then the worst happened,
okay.
Right? And basically also, now I'm going to get you mad, but basically...
I am mad.
Leclerc earlier warned that his tires was going to go if he kept driving like that. So they were probably all on the limit with the left front anyway. So maybe it wasn't even the mirror that ruined the tires.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that. In the old days, for absolute sure, you would be timed as a marshal running across a track, and your marshal captain would understand exactly how much gap was needed for you to retrieve an object like that. But we live in a world that is increasingly risk avoidant. And I'm not going to argue whether that's a good or a bad thing. But what I will absolutely say about probably why there was a bit of a delay on the safety car is because I think at that point we had Bottas, we had either lapped cars coming up or some cars already lapped, which means any safety car is going to go multi-lap to send the lapped cars around before you restart. So that would have complicated it. The object as itself wasn't being initially problematic. And I'm certain what was happening was a discussion about whether a marshal could be sent safely out under the virtual safety car. Is there a big enough gap?
Safety? Who said anything about safety? Brad Pitt would have just run out and got it.
Yeah. He would have actually leaned out of the car when he was driving by and snatched it up and then pitched it.
That's how you are built for combat. But look, I think, I don't want to dwell too much on this, but there was a really small object, a bit of debris off the racing line, right near the pit lane. It could have taken 4 seconds for a marshal to linger at the edge of the pit lane, wait for a bit of a gap, take about 4 steps, pick it up, come back. Absolutely so bizarre that we then had, 5 laps? Did we have 5 laps past this small bit of debris where you had varying amounts of caution into the only overtaking zone on track? Sometimes it was a double waved yellow, sometimes it was a solid yellow. And then after all of that, you get Bottas scattering it everywhere, and you have Carlos Sainz get a puncher and Lewis Hamilton get a puncher. So obviously at that point, your delaying tactics haven't worked. You've been found out. You've been like a rabbit in headlights. It's over. Call the safety car. Carlos Sainz did a whole lap and pitted before that action was then taken. But we have an exact tool for if you don't want to send a marshal out, send out a virtual safety car. If you don't want it to be unfair to everybody, say virtual safety cars have a minimum of 1 lap. Send your VSC out. It goes out for 1 lap. It's the same for everyone. Simple. Leaving it for all that time was insane, Matt.
Yeah, and that's where I think you're looking at a new race director, and it's problematic because a virtual safety car should have been the automatic response. Virtual safety car, we have an object on track that is a safety issue. I understand that punctures happened, but that was after Bottas hit it, and the fact that it was still on the track was the safety issue. immediate virtual safety car once you figure out what it is. And then you can see, is there a way to get someone on track safely to retrieve it? If not, full safety car, fair enough. And if
Well, it was anyway.
Well, that's because Bottas hit it.
Someone was going to hit it.
But it was like 4 laps later.
But someone was going to hit it.
They went through 4 laps, including some laps where there was no cautions at all on the front straight where the mirror was, before Bottas hit it, and he hit it getting out of the way for blue flags of all things. A virtual safety car would have solved all of those problems. They would have had time to figure it out and either go full safety car to retrieve it if that was necessary, or if there was time under the virtual safety car, it could have been done then, and the race could have continued.
Jason in our Patreon Discord says marshals will not enter the track on virtual safety car. Marshals will only enter the track on safety car or red flag. Okay, well, if that's the rules, I'm going to just say, right, that must be new because, like I said, I have seen
Newish.
1,000 instances of marshals running on and just picking up a front wing or whatever and running off. Like, I'm always the first to go, like, I love safety, you know, death only has to win once. We have to win every day. I get all that. But come on, a few steps onto a racetrack to pick up a wing, that's the last thing I'm going to say on it. Just to pick up a little mirror and walk back off does not seem beyond the wit of humans.
Or you could throw in like a net on a stick or something and just pick it up. It's so easy. I mean, there must be a solution. This is Formula One.
Yeah.
It's the spaceship industry of race cars.
We could just fit a scoop on the front of the safety car and they could just deploy it down the straight.
Safety plow. Okay. So the race-defining thing here was that Lando Norris ended up getting a penalty for it. And it's so unfortunate. Lando Norris said, well, I'm not stupid. I wouldn't have just driven through a double-waved yellow. But he did. And the thing is, it was so harsh. So he ends up getting this penalty. It's delayed for ages. And by the time he serves the penalty, it's all behind the safety car. So there's no leniency taken into account for that. I'm not even necessarily arguing with the 10-second stop and go drive-through penalty. But if he'd have served it the next lap or by the time that TV had identified that he didn't lift, then it's a much less severe penalty. The fact that it's after the safety car means he drops to the back of the grid. And it's hard to fathom what was going on.
Well, you're talking about a 35-second penalty there. There's no coming back from that. That's a pit stop plus 10 seconds.
Not for the win, no.
I mean, you know, as it is, I believe he got back into the points and got fast laps. So fair enough. But the amount of time it took did remove, did take away laps for him to recover further. But the moment that penalty happened, even if it was just a 5-second, even if it was just a drive through the pit lane, even if it was a 5-second stop that got added to him at the end of the race, a 5-second penalty at the end of the race, it was still the race for the front was done at that point. But that wasn't the only damage. It was done by not clearing the mirror before Bottas hit it.
Yes, you at the back there with the 90s pop star blonde tips. Yes, you there? Yeah,
that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just gonna add. Wasn't there some confusion about what was yellowed and what wasn't yellowed?
Yeah,
at some point, it wasn't yellow, and then it was only like a yellow sign, but no flags. So you could understand if maybe the drivers was a little bit perplexed here. And I find it really odd that you have a situation where we only look into Lando, we only hear one radio, we hear nothing about any other cars. There's 20 cars going around the track. And there's probably one more car that didn't lift, to be honest, because it was such a mellow yellow. So if you can call it that.
Yeah, because there's no real danger. It's off the racing line. So why can't we have this Formula E system where me and Brad were discussing it? They come on the radio and they say, hello, all drivers, all teams. There is debris on the inside on the overtaking line. We're under yellow.
Exactly.
Please don't come off the racing line. There's no need. Really,
it's so easy.
It's not like there's a car upside down or there's a car in the firing line off track where you have to slow down and prepare to stop or it's wet conditions. It wasn't really that kind of situation. So you kind of go, well, the lifting is almost performative. And I always hate any system where you have to voluntarily give up an amount of lap time. So there's a few people who've done the traces by going on f1-tempo.com and you can see all the traces. And yes, Norris doesn't lift. But Sainz barely lifts. Verstappen is flat out until the specific point on that lap of where the debris is, lifts, that's fine, comes off it, and then goes straight back on it at the normal kind of time in the corner. So it's all a little bit performative. I think Verstappen's smart enough to go, there's nothing really wrong here, but I've got to make sure I lift A, and then I can do a little bit of gamesmanship and check if Norris has lifted. I think Norris has just got blinded to it, and he's gone, well, the car in front isn't slowing down, so I won't slow down. And you wouldn't be able to perceive the difference at that distance of Verstappen lifting normally for the corner or lifting specifically for this yellow flag. And I think that's what caught him out.
So just one short comment. If you look at it from the outside, there's no difference in the danger from the way Verstappen drives and the way Norris drives. Looking at that and then appointing a 10-second stop-and-go penalty, 20. I mean, that is just, it's just not in what do you call it?
No.
Proportional.
What is this called?
It's not proportionate.
That is right.
Because there was no visible. Norris was in a situation where anything that was a safety hazard should have been visible to him. And I think that was part of the point that Andrea Stella made after the race. Like, we're not at a point where there could be someone or something off track that he can't see. There's nothing blocking your sight lines down that straight. And there was absolutely visible from the one little replay I've seen from there's a green flag going into turn 1 as well that was very clearly there.
Yes. I've always hated that in racing is you can see the green flag area. So if there's nothing between you and the green flag, it's like a speed limit on the motorway. When you see that end of restriction speed limit, you start planting it. But look, I think that distance the between the mirror coming off and the safety car, all of that period was a sham from the FIA. You shouldn't have a mix of yellow flags. It should have just been a VSC or someone running on and getting it. Like in the olden days, but it is a slam dunk. You are technically meant to lift or show that you've lifted, and Sainz and Verstappen showed that they lifted, even though it was Sainz pretty much lifted at the same point as you would for the corner, but technically did lift more than normal, and Norris got caught napping really. So you can't technically argue with all those scenarios. It is a bit of a shame. I would still put a lot of the fault on the FIA, because if it had been a one-lap virtual safety car, it would still have been game on. Even a full safety car, you'd have put yourself in that situation where they're out on the hard tyres, and then we've got a race because we have Lando Norris faster on the hard tyres than Max Verstappen on the hard tyres, because the Verstappen thing on a sprint weekend, it is a pattern now. We are seeing this pattern on the sprint weekend where, for whatever reason, they go from the sprint to the main race. They seem to dial in a bit of front end. They get this fantastic one-lap pace and then fall behind a little bit in the race. So today, like in Austria, he didn't have the race pace on Lando Norris, and it would have been this fantastic battle of a slower car defending against a faster car, and we were completely robbed of it by all this pointlessness. And that wasn't the way the race should have been settled.
I agree. And the only thing I can say is this isn't even the first time this season that we've seen some weirdness from race direction around when yellow flags and safety cars and virtual safety cars are called. So it's going to be tempting just to blame the new race director. But I still feel like there's a larger underlying issue that needs addressing.
Addressing like a Thousand Island?
No. Addressing like getting a new suit is what he actually meant.
Okay. Okay, fine. I want to add a quote from Romain Grosjean, who tweeted or X'd or what he did. I don't know if he threaded it or if he blue skied it or whatever. He said, "Just watch the Qatar GP. Got to say those penalties are quite unusual and bloody complicated to understand." And this is a former Formula One driver, right? But and I totally see all this from your point of view, and I think there's something wrong. It's a little bit like that Little Britain sketch where he just says no, computer says no, computer says no.
Yeah, a little bit.
There's no bending the rules. There's no reality check or anything. It's just what's in the paper. But We did see some changes in, especially, and I just got to applaud Magnussen's effort in the last couple of races, especially the T1 incidents first with Tsunoda and later with Albon, where they basically choose not to investigate those. And in the first incident, Magnussen was pushed off, got on again, and then overtook in the next corner. It was something that would have been given a 50-minute penalty 2 weeks ago. So something's changing in the race direction. And I think
it wasn't even
some
referred.
level... Sorry?
It wasn't even referred, that one, to the steward.
Yeah, they were both referred.
Oh,
and there were
Oh.
no investigation. I mean... Something's definitely different, especially the thing about running people off. And there's something interesting coming from this. I don't know if you've checked the thing Max Verstappen said about George Russell after the race.
That's we have that drama to get to. Yes.
Yeah, but that has to do with that pushing people off the track. Because according to to George Russell, Russell sounds like I'm drunk. According to George Russell, in the organization, the thing they discuss is a 19 against 1 thing, and that is why Max Verstappen is so angry now, especially after the qualifying thing. So everything is sort of connected together. But I do want to say hats off to the race direction for some of the incidents today, even though it got completely out of hand.
All right. Well, actually, that sounds like a good incident to go to next. So during qualifying, there was an incident with Verstappen and George Russell, both on their out lap, so getting ready to do a fast lap, and Max Verstappen ended up getting a 1-place penalty, which I've never seen that before. But Christian's right. There is just weird stuff going on. So that is meant to be a 3-place grid penalty, but they gave him leniency because the impeding wasn't to do with an actual hot lap. It was just to do with the prep lap. Now, Verstappen was incandescent with rage and has said stuff like, basically, I cannot be bothered with George Russell anymore. He tried to get me, he tried to really stitch me up in the steward's office, went out of his way to try and get me into trouble, which is a little rich when you then are someone who goes out of their way to snitch on Lando Norris
for being not lifting under yellows. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Russell was doing the same thing that all the drivers do. They are all tattletales, Matt, these days.
Yeah, it's horrible. As someone who grew up with that being the worst possible thing
you can't be a grass. You can't
when I was a kid. Oh, you never wanted that label because you could never escape it. It really is hilarious to see the drivers constantly. Did he lift? Was he speeding in the pit lane? Was he this? Was he that? Oh, come on. But to be fair, given how busy race direction was today, it probably wasn't bad for them to make a note of it, for them to investigate later.
I don't see a problem with the penalty. So some people are going to argue with me, and let's see if the panel will argue with me today as well. But if you remember back a couple of years ago, they got into this situation where it was getting quite dangerous, where you had really slow cars either doing a very specific prep. For example, they didn't want to get any heat into the tyres at all because, it would heat up enough during the lap, or they were looking for specific gaps or trying to get a tow. So you'd get people really slowing down. And I think you had a situation, was it Monza, where most of the cars missed their chance to do a final Q2 run or something like that. And
yes.
It was there was like a Hulkenberg train or something going.
And then I think Sainz just went past all of them, and none of the other 12 or none of the other 6 made the line. Yeah.
But you were getting situations where cars on hot laps were having to go past queues of nearly stationary cars. So this is why the maximum lap time thing came in. So Max has kind of got pinged for going unnecessarily slowly. That was the specific thing that those rules were trying to stop. So Max argues he's trying to get out of the way. He's probably trying to find the correct position to be in so that he's not got traffic. But the notes really, really linger on the fact that he was on the racing line and that he knew exactly where George Russell was. Yeah. So it almost seems like they were trying to punish him for interfering with his pole rival on purpose. That's what the if you read between the lines, that's what they were insinuating.
Oh, well, yeah. And this has been an ongoing problem, I think, for the FIA and for the drivers, because going back even to Brazil last year, 2 years ago, when we had the Ocon Alonso crash, Sainz, or was it Leclerc, was like, look, what's happening is people are waiting. They're looking in their mirrors. They're on the racing line. And then half a second before I get there, they get out of the way. And they're doing it on purpose to try and take people out of getting their best hot lap. And all the drivers, or many of the drivers, are playing this game. What Max was doing, looking in the mirrors, seeing right where George was, and clearly being on the racing line, he was very clearly intending to mess with Russell. Unfortunately for him, I think he misjudged the closing speed a little bit. So Russell actually caught him when he was fully on the racing line, clearly in Russell's way, and it's pretty indefensible. So I get that it's an odd penalty, but if I'm a new race director and I want the drivers to understand that I think this is dangerous and they need to cut it out, well, then that's absolutely in the wheelhouse of the kind of thing that you'd want to see penalized. So fair enough. I don't think I have a big problem with it.
I totally agree with Matt, but again, something's weird with this penalty, not just from the way it's given or the perspectives of it's the one place grid penalty. You have to go and bend the rules, and normally we talk about these rules as being black and white. You can't bend the rules, but how can a 3-point penalty become a 1-point penalty? That takes a lot of bending. You know?
There's a lot of interpretation there. Show me the regulation that says you can take off 2 places.
When did we start bending the rules? All of this is just what is going on in the tail of the ship of trouble that is called Ben, sailing around the seas of the racing world.
Wow, I've dared not speak his name, to be honest here. But let's go to the Patreon live chat for a second. Will Helmos says Russell was politicking after the race, playing the stewards through the media. Not cool. Actually, Russell was doing that with the McLaren guys after the sprint race as well, wasn't he? Going like, well, that's not what the viewers want to see at home. Don't speak for me, George. I like seeing teamwork. I like that kind of thing where one driver's using his DRS and the teams work together. I've always liked that, even when it's been the teams that I'm not a fan of. But he was doing that. He's been really active in the media. And I've always said he plays the media. He knows people are watching. He's very, very conscious of his image. It's all very manicured. That's part of his shtick. That's part of the way he goes about things. I'm not criticizing it. But also Steve, I think, where are we? Oh, it's flying so fast, the comments. Steven says, the race director doesn't set penalties. So we have to be clear that we're talking about two separate bodies within the FIA, race control and the stewards that set the penalty. So race control is an appointed person. The stewards rotate throughout the races as well. So I think we could go into, I think stewarding's not the topic for today, Matt. I think it is more the race control for today.
And it is, just to be clear, the stewards are the ultimate final arbiters of the penalty, but it's not like race direction, and the race director won't necessarily be involved. So it's a little more nuanced than it's just the stewards, and all the race director does is refer it. The stewards can ask questions of anyone they want and request things from the race direction, including consultation. But more to the point, they will have had a conversation before the weekend to sort of set the tone for the stewarding. That would be where I'm looking for why things turned out the way they did this weekend.
It's all very Hallmark, isn't it, Matt? It's all very Hallmark movie. Like, we're not even talking about rate. Like, we'll get to it. I think even if we have more politics stuff and steward stuff to talk about, I'm going to go to the racing incidents next. Because, I mean, look, I'd love to talk about how, this is a motorbike track. This is a MotoGP track. All the corners open up at the end. So whenever you saw an error or people losing the rear, it was always on exit or people going through the gravel, because you've got to pick your acceleration point very early, because I think that's what the bike people like. They like to lie down on their side and then twist the little throttle thing. And they need the kind of sweeping corners, don't they? Motorbikes, they like the sweeping corners, where it's not much good for car racing. They have to pin it early, and it reduces the opportunity for racing. But we don't even get to talk about, the one battle because it was ruined by this. But we definitely did have racing incidents. But more and more that we have access to the drivers and their personalities, the more it just becomes like a high school drama. This is more your world, Kristian. This is more like a TV drama world.
I just love this track. I know you're asking me something. I just love the Qatar track. I just love this giant kart track in the middle of the desert that is making all the drivers desperate and ruining the tires and stuff like that. I think I know you guys. You didn't comment my WhatsApp message when I said I love the race. You just left me hanging. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're the only one. So. Okay, look, you can defend the track. I think that this is, an organization that wanted a race. They have a bike track. They didn't go out of their way to make a car specific track or a street circuit. They just used the bike track that they had. And actually, just on a normal race, there's no opportunity to overtake. So George Russell stuck behind those McLarens, even with a big pace delta in the sprint race. I don't mind a track where you only have one key place to overtake. But here, turn one, they get on the brakes and then they're off the brakes very quickly. It looks like it's a big sweeping turn, but to a Formula One car with loads of downforce, they're almost aiming at the halfway point of the corner. If that makes sense, the halfway point of the corner is the exit. So they're off the brakes early. It's a super early exit. They're flat out. They go to the edge in the middle, and then they've got enough downforce to accelerate all the way around. So it isn't really a big enough corner for F1 cars to go racing. And you would sit there and defend it, Kristian.
Yeah, but I think if you ask the drivers if they like this track, I think they will all say it's so fun. It's so hard, but it's so rewarding to drive and yada, yada, yada. And it's from that point of view I'm saying it.
Okay. They get like money and being famous and fancy dogs and like the lifestyle of a Formula One driver. That's what they get. I get to comment on what we watch.
It's because of the MotoGP thing. You are so angry because it's
he's jealous of the MotoGP thing. It's true.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm slightly upset.
We see through you.
I'm slightly upset that the MotoGP podcast hosted by Kyle, which I never go on and Matt goes on, is out downloading our Formula E podcast that Christina hosts, which I do go on. But that's going to change because Formula E is now no longer behind a paywall for the next season. It's going to be on ITV3, 4 and ITVX. So we're coming at you, MotoGP podcast. We are coming back at you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll look in our rear view mirror for you.
That's where we are.
Famously, MotoGP doesn't have mirrors. That's one of the things that makes it amazing to watch.
I interrupted a previous point you were going to make. I challenge you to remember it.
Okay, I was going to make a point about, I actually specifically kind of like the turn 1-2 complex because it allows outside as well as inside passes to occur. The thing that I don't like, and I know maybe I'm just ruining what might have been a show order we thought about at one point or another. What I don't like is that you're not required to leave room for the outside car if they're more or less alongside you, because we got some really good multi-corner battles happening.
Sort of.
But a lot of them got wiped out because the inside car just simply drove to the outside of the exit of turn 1, even though that's not really where you want to be to set up your entrance to turn 2.
Okay, so I guess we can get into some. Whose fault is it? Yes, there was a few incidents. And actually, I always say the secret to happiness, especially for a married 44-year-old with teenage children, the secret to happiness is low expectations. But,
Sorry, did you say 24-year-old?
Have I just revealed that my Twitter bio is a lie? Yes, you're right. Sorry. As a 34-year-old,
there we go,
father of teenagers. Yeah, that'll work. I say, we'll go to the fair, but who knows? Maybe it's too crowded. We'll go to the restaurant. Maybe they don't have a table. Maybe we have to find somewhere else. Just low expectations, managing expectations. So I said to my boy, I said, I'll come and pick you up from the place. If you want to come and watch the Qatar Grand Prix with me, I'll come and pick you up. No drama. I just warn you, it's not going to be the best one. I have low expectations for it. And then instantly we get a bunch of drama, which kind of makes up for it. So you can enjoy F1 for the race cars if you want, the personalities, the strategies, or smashy race cars, which does happen sometimes. And the teenagers do kind of tend to go, whoa, cool. And we lost 3 drivers straight away. So I think the most straightforward one is maybe the Hulk smash, Matt.
Yes, Hulk smash both Colapinto and Ocon out of the race before they even make it through the first turn. That was spectacularly bad driving by him.
Yeah, well, all right, okay. Also, I owe Colapinto an apology. So because I got emotionally invested in Colapinto and got on the hype train, and then I've been disappointed by the recent crashes and the repair bill that he's doing. As soon as I saw him off the track and spun around, I went, oh, well, there you go. There you go. That's another one. There you go. Before seeing the replay, but I did. I wrote, because I suddenly went, oh, I'm negative on Colapinto now because I had the good thing and the good thing's being taken away. And I'm like, oh, yeah, typical. Of course, the good thing's getting taken away. Of course it is. But obviously not his fault at all. Super unlucky.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a very clear instance, and there's not too many of them, where I don't know how you could argue it any way other than that Hulkenberg entered the corner far too fast.
Oh, on the hard tires as well.
On the hard tires, his braking point was way too late, and he just literally spun the car, and the only reason he didn't spin all the way around was because he hit Ocon and then smashed Ocon directly into Colapinto in a lovely demonstration of Newtonian physics.
It's one of those things where, was it Colapinto who did this? We would all be like, we were so wrong. He's not grown up enough to be a Formula One driver. But when it's Hulkenberg, we're just like, well, stuff happens, and then we move on. So well, it was just I mean, he could have won there, right? If the tires maybe just 1 or 2 degrees more, it could have been a big one, right? But
it's a really interesting point because, yeah, if Colapinto had done exactly the same thing, we would all have seen it as well. That's the nail in the coffin. But because it's Hulkenberg, we go, wow, it's on the hard tires. It's a very slippery track. I think it was slippery in the early corners as well. So that one's clear. That is Hulkenberg. He's made a mistake. He's locked up. The rear's gone. He's wiped out 2 other cars. That does go down as like a bad one for Hulkenberg. I think the more interesting one was Stroll Albon. And I love these racing incidents where I will look at that incident and straight away we kept rewinding it. Me and the boy, we were like, oh, hang on a minute. Because it's Stroll again. It's Stroll doing Stroll things. Albon politicking, as Max Verstappen would say it, politicking straight away on the radio. Not only, oh, Stroll's hit me, but, oh, I knew he was going to do that. I knew that was going to happen. But the more we watched the replay, and by the way, later on, I was getting upset at the Patreon live chat for doing loads of spoilers. And then I realised I had not fast forwarded it to catch up with it again. I was like, oh, that's my bad. But we watched that incident quite a few times. And I just went, oh, I actually think that's on Albon. And I typed all on Albon on our various platforms, and everyone yelled at me. So, you guys, whose fault do you think it is, Kristian?
I mean, you could ask the driver driving behind from a third different team who had no, assets in this. He was like, what is that Aston Martin doing?
Oh,
what
really?
is up with
Who
that
was that?
car?
Who was that?
That was Joe. So if you have like an independent driver from a third team saying that, it should more or less point you in a direction of blame, I would say.
Oh, I want to look at another replay. I haven't looked at it since then, Matt, but how did you see that one?
The replay that I saw made it look very much like Stroll was at fault. That and a Steward's decision and subsequent retirement of the car. Although,
Matt.
I was going to say props to Aston for remembering to serve the penalty before they retired the car.
Do you know the term sloppy when you're sloppy with your overtaking attempt? When you're sloppy with it, you're doing it, but you're not really putting your wheel there. It was sort of that sort of driving for Stroll. He didn't really try to overtake, but he was just there. And at the same time, if you look at the way, I know this points us in a different direction, and I'm not allowed to. I will bring it back, Spanners, I promise. But if you look at Stroll, look at his behavior, the way he talks in the media pen, that guy is so done with Formula One. I'm pretty sure he's out next year.
Well, I mean,
he looks like it.
You listen to Alonso down the straight, and I think both of the drivers are kind of done with how the car's performing at the moment.
So,
but it's Adrian Newey o'clock.
on the pit walk, there was a close up of Lance Stroll, and you go, okay, close up of a Formula One driver. That's fine. As they zoomed out, it was clear that he was just standing there, and you go, that's weird. For a lot of the Formula One drivers, they're doing like the catch the tennis ball exercise, or they're talking to people. He was just stood about 4 meters away from his car with no one really around him, just kind of going, kind of just phoning it in. So I'm not surprised, but I do want to push back on this incident. So I'm watching it back on a replay. That's the noise you heard there. Was me just digging it out. But in this scenario, I feel like Lance Stroll should have been entitled to just go out to the edge of the track and run Albon off. He's the inside car. Goodness knows where you would judge the apex to be on that corner. But Albon definitely tightens up the corner. And this is very similar to that Perez and Russell incident from Austria that I always bring up. Like Albon didn't try to go all the way out to the edge, which is fine. But I thought we were in this position where basically the inside car dictates where you're meant to drive to. And Albon jutted in. He turned in.
It's corner 4, right? Wasn't it corner 4? I think it's T4. Anyway, it's the type of corner where there's one line through. It's not the type of corner when one is into the corner, there's not room for another one on the inside. And drivers, that is why I'm saying this is a kart track. Everyone knows where to position the car on this track, and there's often just one line, except in T1 and stuff like that. But often in the small corners like this, the 90 degrees corner, it's 45, sorry.
Damn it. I just watched it. I just saw a new angle that I hadn't seen before.
There you go.
Can I just pretend I hadn't just seen that?
For the sake of the show, carry on, by all means.
Okay, so the thing I hadn't seen before, but I will still maintain, Albon definitely could have given more room. Should he?
Yeah, he tightened. I wouldn't argue
he tightened.
that.
So I stick with that. He tightened. But actually, Stroll had a bit of a moment where the back end slide tried to step out, and then he opened the steering to save this. So that is but I don't think it was understeer. I think he actually had a little bit of an oversteer
dunk.
moment.
I think it's a something dunk.
I think he had a bit of an understeer. A wise man changes his mind when the evidence changes. A good content creator would never admit that. Oh, darn. The next one, which is interesting, is Magnussen. In fact, there's 2 Magnussen ones. So firstly, overall, Kristian, Kevin Magnussen, potentially in his penultimate race in Formula One, is still giving it full beans. Like, he cares on the radio when he finally got past Albon. Like, the passion on there is like, this boy is still racing.
I know this sounds Danish, right? But wouldn't you agree that Magnussen's just been delivering all season? I mean, he's in a position where he could just have given up, just have done whatever. He's probably never going to race a Formula One car again, but he's just full on, and he's like the top 3 guy in all year events in each race, and I think Formula One is going to miss that. I really do think Formula One is going to miss that.
Until he goes to Cadillac.
I totally agree. Did you know how many races his father did for Chevrolet? You know, his father, Jan
Quite a lot,
Magnussen, he's sort of like the big deal in the States in the GT area, right? And he did the Chevrolet C5, C6, and C7 in a program from 2005 to 2019, and they loved Jan Magnussen. They sort of had a really bad split. They weren't too nice to Jan Magnussen, as far as I know. But they can make up for that now, couldn't they? And who knows a lot about tires?
You know when people go, oh, British bias. And by the way, I occasionally go on X and I just search the term British bias because it's such an F1 thing now, and I just go through like pre-blocking people, and it's really helped my Twitter experience. It's been so much nicer since I've just sat in bed, just spend 5 minutes, blah 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 blah. But when I hear all the British bias, I go, no, I'm not, nuh-uh. But then I just heard a Dane describe Kevin Magnussen as one of the top 3 performers in every weekend. I see it now.
I didn't say that. I said he's in the top 3 of the guys during the entire season who's made the most of himself in the races with different overtakes. So sometimes in the wrong, sometimes in the right, but he's always been there. He's always been trying.
Can we run the tape back?
Car, right?
Can I run the tape back? I think that Kristian said Magnussen has been one of the top 3 greatest drivers in history, and now he's inventing. Oh, quick diversion, right? Has anyone else started using like stop inventing and stuff as part of their day-to-day language. Like it's fully become like my kids use it, and I think they've spread it to other kids in their school. Like, for stop making things up, stop lying, stop inventing. And I said it just because it's so part of my language. I said it to Nick, and she just went, "Will you stop telling me just to stop inventing?" I hate it. And I went, "Oh, I didn't even realize I was doing it." It'd become.
I think you're saying that to me once every time I'm on.
Yeah, I can't help
I'm just
it.
making.
It's part of my. It's part
but
of my.
I will back you up on the K-Mag performance all season long, because even when, like, I know the new update really brought him back into the frame with Hülkenberg. Whatever that issue was, they resolved. But even when he didn't have the car, I mean, we were at Miami. We saw how he did everything he could to the limit and occasionally beyond the regulations.
Occasionally beyond.
To perform for his team. And he brought them a lot of points by so doing. And today, with Hülkenberg taking himself out, he is the only reason they have even a shot now at 6th in the championship, because he still managed to get some decent points, even though his pit strategy meant that he completely lost out at the safety car.
They've been a really good team pairing, I think, Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen, just from just high level all the time, getting the maximum out of minimum or medium or whatever. I think they've really proven their worth this season.
Okay, there's a counter comment here by frontwingendplates.org that says, no, Kevin Magnussen has not been one of the best people. He has been brutal to front wing end plates, but he has definitely been like fully racing. I think most people would say that Hülkenberg has been the better of the Haas drivers. Don't think you're going to.
Maybe it's because I'm on wireless. But
you're having a bit of
could you repeat that? We lost.
Is the radio cutting out? Is it? Is the radio? Yeah. Anyway, the two incidents with Kevin Magnussen today. One, I think he was really lucky to escape a penalty from Tsunoda. Like the way that happened today, that was awesome. Okay, they're locked in a battle. Tsunoda ends up running him wide, but I think you go, well, if you've been run wide, you get to come back on track and carry on, because the inside car should have left you space. They didn't leave you space. Therefore, you can use, like, if it was grass, unlucky, you're off. The inside car should get a penalty. But F1 isn't run by me yet. And so the current rules are that Tsunoda should have just been able to run Magnussen off. Magnussen ended up overtaking into the next corner. So I just don't understand. Patiently explain to me why Magnussen doesn't get a 10-second penalty for that.
Without looking at a replay, there can be two possible explanations. One, Magnussen was considered to be ahead at the apex. Therefore, Tsunoda needed to leave him room and didn't. Two, there was incidental contact that should not have happened that was adjudged to be more Tsunoda's fault. But the fact that he came back and took the position means it was something they weren't going to bother with. That's what comes immediately to my mind. But again, I need to see a replay of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to search it, but I can't spell Tsunoda or Magnussen, so it's a bit of a nightmare.
It's the point I made earlier about the race control, where I actually gave them credit. And this is the first incident. And what Tsunoda does is, I think Magnussen goes on the outside into T1.
Correct.
He's
and
defending
then Tsunoda,
on the outside,
sort of pushes him wide through the gravel, but Magnussen just keeps it down, the foot floored, and he then just enters the track again alongside Tsunoda, and then overtakes him to the left hand in the next corner. And if that would have been Austin, that would have been
further back.
Yeah, a penalty for making the overtake in the next corner, I would argue, for Magnussen. And what I like here is that they don't interfere, because basically Tsunoda should have been given a warning, but Magnussen still gets what he's going for, so it just neutralizes. And that is the way you should race control.
I have one more thing to add, and you pointed this out, Kristian, but I just want to make it the TLDR is that the third thing you could intuit from that was that the pass, he wasn't considered to have passed Tsunoda when he came back on track. They were still side by side, and then the pass happened later.
Exactly.
Therefore, it wasn't a penalty.
Okay, I've got to stop watching replays in real time on the show. For blood, I didn't see that. That angle wasn't available. I'm sure that angle wasn't available.
To the
Are you going to file an appeal with yourself?
5 minutes ago,
You'll get your money back at least.
Standing, he was stretching arms and just watching replays while me and Matt is carrying the podcast.
So Magnussen was so clearly...
As we frequently do.
So Magnussen was so clearly ahead at the apex. So that's a kind of like a play the advantage. So Magnussen has been fouled, but will play the advantage. Okay, so I don't mind that at all. However, George Russell and the Grand Prix Drivers Association, the GDPA, Grand Prix...
GPDA.
Yeah, sure. They have been putting pressure on the FIA, and apparently they're all fine with it, that next season, it won't matter whether you were ahead at the apex or not. You can still just run the driver off track, because that's what they grow up with, that you should never be overtaken around the outside.
Well, you should, if you're... And this goes back, because we watched this. We've argued about this for almost a decade now. But if you look, the inside car exiting the turn, their front axle is ahead. They pick a line that the car with the front axle behind on the outside has to comply with. That's what they're trying to boil down into sentences that can be taken, screenshots that can be taken out of context and make a judgment on. Now, to me, I think that yields worse racing. You want to keep the cars next to each other for as many corners as possible. That's what makes for a good show. So to me, the simple rule is whichever driver leaves the least amount of room if there's contact or someone goes off, that driver is considered to be at fault. But at a minimum, the judgment has to come on the exit of the turn. If we get round the apex and we're headed out of the turn, if I'm on the inside and my front axle is ahead of yours, you need to comply with me. And to me, this is intuitive because of bike racing, where if my handlebars are behind yours, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it.
From my understanding from Russell, I'm going to call him that, from Russell.
George Russell.
In the GPGA discussions, the one thing they all agree on, except one apparently, is you cannot go into an overtake and leave the car no room on the outside and then go off the track yourself.
Yeah,
that is the one thing they all disagree about. Apart from that, they are more or less happy with the rulings as they are. Of course, there are details. That is from my understanding from the interview with Russia.
Well, because they always imagine themselves to be the car on the inside wanting to do that to someone that's faster than them, but also they put themselves in a position to pass. But that's not always where they're going to be.
So how come
speaking,
Norris never puts himself down the inside? Every single...
I saw that. I'm like, oh, I saw Max's rear go once, twice, 3 times in that turn. I'm like, oh, that's it. Here we go, down. And Norris goes to the outside. I'm like, why? Every time. You should have simply driven into the pit wall rather than yield that inside. You should have gotten your front wheels in front of his back wheels and made him drive into you, because that's how you're never going to pass him going around the outside.
No. Verstappen is absolutely the best at this, because in most forms of racing, if you're karting or you're on iRacing, there comes a point where you're compromising so much by guarding the inside line that it's just not worth it, because you go, right, okay, at some point you go, okay, you want the inside, take it, but I'm not moving to the outside now. I'm holding it. I'm going to squeeze you to the inside, and at some point I'm going to just jut out a little bit, give myself an angle, and I'll be on the exit and I'll have a better run. But Verstappen jealously guards that inside to the detriment of all racing line and racing angles, because he knows he's going to run you off at the edge. He's going to brake later than you, and whether or not it's best for the corner, he's just putting you off track. And Norris kind of gets caught up in that every single time. And the only option is to hold your ground and let Verstappen hit you, and then have the stewards make the decision. And today, when he was round the outside after the first safety car, Verstappen opened the steering. So that wasn't even a normal just running you wide. Verstappen got to a certain point and went, no, just open the steering, and Norris backed out. Just look, it's the end of the season. You've already lost the championship. Just let him hit you. Hold your ground. Let him hit you. And nobody would have argued with that. If Verstappen had opened the steering into him and there'd have been an incident, that would have been a no-brainer. He'd have got a penalty and Norris wins the race.
And this is another reason why Magnussen is better than Norris.
I just do find it frustrating watching Norris versus... But I'll tell you what, it was the same as watching Rosberg versus Hamilton. It was nearly exactly the same. Like Hamilton just bullied Rosberg in every single case.
It's a very difficult thing to do. Just leave it. Just seeing him running a little more open wheel than he's supposed to on the inside and just keeping the foot down, it's very difficult. And actually, I agree that Lando should be a little bit more Magnussen-ish in his driving vibe. But I also think that once you go that route, you can't do the other thing. You have to pick one of them. And I don't see Lando Norris as that kind of driver ever. And I just want to tell you, he picked up, I think it was 19 seconds in 10 laps in the last 10 laps of the race. So he's been a brilliant driver this year in his own way, in his own underplayed way, honest personality kind of way. But I kind of dig it, to be honest.
Thane Krell says Lando is in a world championship fight. He can't just crash. All right, well, he can't just speed under yellows either. But okay,
well, I mean, no, he's not.
Fair. Wait, he is in a world championship fight.
Oh,
he's
champion.
Yeah, world constructors. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sort
okay,
of.
fair point.
Yeah. I tend to underrate that. So I think that is that's a fair point. Thane Krell. That sounds Danish as well. There's a lot of Danes. Do you bring them in, Kristian?
That is not a Danish name,
isn't it?
Thane. Mm-hmm. I think if you are to say Thane in Danish, you would say Tane.
Fair enough.
No, that is not fair enough.
I love Denmark, but it's weird. Are you Danes going to still be F1 fans? Are you noping out after next season? You're like, where's the next Dane off the block?
We have a pretty consistent Formula One following in Denmark, and actually Viaplay, the guy Peter Paltoy, who is hosting that, has been doing a really, really good job for many, many years with Nicolas Kieser, the former Formula One driver, on his side. So I think on their best days, they have around 150,000 Danish viewers.
That's like all of Denmark.
It is on a Sunday at 2:00 in summertime when the sun is shining. That is a lot of viewers in Denmark.
I've noticed that we've accidentally started talking about the person who won the race today.
Oh, right. Okay, let's go.
Now,
we've talked about Verstappen a lot lately.
It's
and
worth
today.
giving him some credit, because when he did what he did it exactly to the letter of the brand new rules that are supposedly coming in.
Sure.
And so who amongst you is going to say, look, he did exactly the most he was allowed to do by the regulations? But what I also want to point to is I want to go back to the sprint race that was so exciting because of the teamwork at the front, creating a 10-car DRS train in which nothing happened. But at the back, Red Bull was running illicit aerodynamic experiments with Sergio Perez to help Max out for the qualifying and race today. And they completely pulled it off. They turned that car around and made it a race winner when it most clearly was not going into the sprint.
All right. Fine.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's it? You're not going to get effusive in your praise of Max's amazing driving and the teamwork?
Okay. Cards on the table. Like Brazil, I was very... I showered him in praise. I've showered him in praise, beating Norris in every aspect and saying he would have won in the McLaren. And I definitely want to do a deep dive into every single point that I think makes that true. Because Norris came out and said, oh yeah, but no one's ever come back from a deficit as big as that. Yeah, but you were still partly responsible for that deficit. I don't think that deficit...
But you could still be that person.
Yeah, also, I don't think that deficit exists in the first place if Verstappen was the one trying to pick up points. And I don't think Norris wins every race early in the season that Verstappen wins, given the form that he had for the rest of the season. But anyway, this race in particular, I think is one of those ones where a lot of people fell away. A lot of people had poor performance. Russell, for example, at the beginning of the race seemed to just give it away. It didn't seem like You know, that was the greatest performance off the line. You know, Norris, again, ended up yielding. So whilst I think that, you know, Verstappen's really, really good, I don't think this is like one of his best victories, if you like. There's, you know, there's just a lot of mediocre things happening behind him at the moment. Kristian.
I want to add to your Red Bull praise, because having a car on a Friday that makes your driver scream obscenity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then just turn it around like that. It's Q3. I mean, we've seen it, what is it, like 3-4 races in a row now, that they have a messed up Friday car, sometimes messed up Saturday car, and then Sunday just...
Well, not every team has just a driver that they don't mind completely sacrificing for a sprint race to try out new setups and new stuff like that. So I'm not going to give it the like.
I think I read somewhere that Paris is guilty of 50% of all Q1 exits for Red Bull in its entire history as a team.
There's so many stats. There's so many stats like this as well.
That is wild.
Also, no driver has ever. He's responsible for 100% of all times in F1 history that someone has lost a place from a pit lane start. No one has ever lost a place from a pit lane start before.
That was so symptomatic, right? Wasn't that so symptomatic of Paris?
Yeah,
and
horrible.
Actually, I have a question about Paris. So, Carlos Slim, is he his sugar daddy? I mean,
yes,
it kind
so to
of
speak.
is.
I mean, you made it weird, but yes, that is his backer.
But I was
At least there wasn't a poem.
Yeah,
I have a business idea. So you could do like something called not OnlyFans, but only F1. It would still be OF. So if Carlos Slim has Sergio Perez has an OF account, right? And Carlos is like, yeah, I'm digging this. Let me sign up.
I don't like
what's going on.
I don't like what you've done here. At least it's not a poem, so I'm going to take my win and move on.
You can edit it out. I made it completely just me, not talking on top of you, but I will ruin that.
No, don't do it, Kristian. Don't do it. Right. So, smooth segue without Kristian ruining it is probably into Hamilton, and what a disastrous weekend that was. See how quickly I move on from Perez? It's very demure. But
Pain to pain.
But yeah, Lewis Hamilton's performance this weekend was almost on Perez level. Like, it was shockingly behind in all the qualifying sessions, off pace in the sprint, and also like 1.25 seconds behind. I think we mentioned it at the beginning of the show on race pace, to the point that he had to ask, like, is my car broken? So you could say, well, you're just slow and you feigned that. But I don't think they're driving the same setups in the same car at the moment. And Jenson Button on the commentary made a big point. Former F1 champion Jenson Button made a big point of saying the teams generally have the same cars. As in, there's no conspiracy, there's no fixing of one car or another. He must just be going through a lack of confidence or just not driving very well this weekend. But Lewis Hamilton isn't 7/10 off George Russell in qualifying trim. He's not. Last weekend, he was on fire at Brazil, charging through the pack. He didn't suddenly become 1.25 seconds on race pace slower. And I would just counter Jenson Button's point by saying it is very, 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 very common for Formula One teams to make one car faster than the other to suit their purpose. I would say that has happened so many times that it is inanely boring to suggest that a team might make one car faster than another car within a team.
Jenson Button, with whom I've had conversations.
You've touched Jenson Button.
He shook my hand. Indeed.
Wow.
Before yours. But we won't get into who got that first. He's right. Because what he means is they both have the same parts on the car. They're not giving Hamilton, like we know Colapinto had an old spec Williams.
And Ocon's had a heavier Alpine.
He hasn't had the new front wing and hasn't had a lot of things. And we can talk about Ocon in a minute, I guess, because that's sort of fun.
No,
too.
we're out of time.
Well, okay.
There's rumors.
They're not. They're confirmed. They're confirmed. Okay, we'll go to that next.
Are they confirmed?
They're confirmed. We'll go to it next.
The point I want to make is where Hamilton and Russell will differ is in how the car is set up in terms of its suspension and that sort of thing. That will be very different. But the messages from Mercedes suggested to me that they got it wrong, that the team got the car set up wrong. Now, interesting to note, track temperature was just north of 23°C today. It was a bit cooler for the sprint, and it was a lot cooler in Las Vegas. So one thing that suggests itself is that they've just wandered the other side of that magic temperature where their car works kind of like they thought it would 3 years ago when they designed it. And the other thing to point out is that Hamilton also picked up that puncture along with Sainz from Bottas hitting the mirror that should have been cleared under the virtual safety car that didn't happen in time because of reasons we still don't understand. But I don't want to get back into that. So his race was over for a long time, but he also had a jump start. And what I'm seeing from a lot of these drivers is a shocking degree of not entirely being with it. And I don't know if it's because the season is so long, because they've had so many weird night races so close together, because there's so many triple headers. But whatever, I think it's something that might bear a separate examination once we have a little bit of time.
What I found funny was between the two Mercedes in qualifying, Hamilton was 1/10 faster in sector 1 and sector 3, but Russell was always sometimes even 6/10 faster in the middle sector, but usually 3-4 tenths faster. And that is a setup change, but that also could point in a direction of them liking different things in the cars. So maybe Hamilton is only liking the car when it's maybe on a lighter downforce setup, so he can go fast on the straight, whereas Russell is more into the downforce side of things. It looked like that, and that will give you two different driving cars as well. I don't think there is anything to the matter of making Hamilton's car go any slower than it actually is able to do. I mean,
he's obviously mentally checked out of the season as well.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you get a work rate throughout the course of the weekend where you have to prep. He could just be phoning that in a little bit, or efforts that used to go in with Hamilton now go in with Russell. I'll just read Harb's comment for you, Matt. If you have limited money, limited CFT time, and limited wind tunnel time, there has to be hundreds of small decisions where you have to choose between a setup typically run by Russell and one run by Hamilton. And who do you prioritize? It's similar to Vettel losing 8/10 in one season. In Ferrari, yes, that's the one I always cite. Like a switch, Leclerc suddenly became the chosen driver. That doesn't happen to someone that wins 4 championships. Great comment, Harb. Because it suits my narrative, great comment. Anyone disagreeing, bad comment, deleted, timeout, gone.
I don't want to disagree, but I do want to add every time we see Hamilton either winning a championship or knowing there's no championship on the line, or he's leaving a team, whatever, as soon as he's not mind and heart, when those things are not combined, it's not going to work. And he's checked out. Imagine what's going to happen when he that morning mist at Fiorano. He walks out in the morning mist, the Ferrari garage. You hear sounds in the background. People are flashing, and you see him driving that's next year in February when Lewis Hamilton is going to be at the track.
One more race.
Yeah.
One more race. The other thing to remember is that as they get closer to the end of the season, the drivers get excluded from more and more technical meetings. And that does bear a cost on their performance. In fact, I think it's kind of unusual to see Sainz performing as well as he is, given how close we are to the end of the season. Whatever that means about Ferrari and their leadership, I don't know. But he's about the only one.
Before we get into Ocon Corner, because I know nobody else but Matt cares, but we will do it, and make sure that you go and click on the links in the show notes below where you can find all our Blue Sky and Twitter, Instagram profiles. The one specific thing I'm asking for, apart from come and join us at patreon.com/missedapex and be a patron over winter, where we're going to do lots of fun content. The thing I'm working on at the moment is doing a daily TikTok. So doing one of those, here's a hot take on a thing for a minute. And I'm doing all the TikTok hyperbole as well. So if you're on TikTok anyway, please click the link in the show notes. Give us a follow. That would really help. And if my silly face pops up saying silly things, just let my little video run and then repost it. It doesn't matter whether you've got listeners or not. We're trying to get the algorithm going. Repost it, like, comment, interact.
Is he dancing, Matt? Is he doing the dances?
I'm wearing a crop top and doing simple dances with a hula hoop whilst giving F1 opinions. But also, I'm treating that a lot like I do with like tweets that I throw out. Instead of tweeting it, I'm just sticking the phone up and doing that kind of thing. So, go on, Matt, were you going to mention something?
I was going to say, I always love these announcements because about half the time I'm like, oh, I suddenly need to buy tickets to someplace in the next week that I hadn't planned on going to.
I don't know why you're saying
surprise
that.
Announcements. We'll be doing a karting event at.
I see.
All right, yeah, okay, here we go. I
no.
best get some tickets for that.
So no, we are going to go for a pre-season event. We're not doing a post-season event because I feel with the post-season, as soon as the final race ends, it's a little post-coital. Everyone just wants to have a cigarette and fall asleep. But we'll wait for the build-up to the new season, and we'll try and get some kind of live event there, and we'll get Matt over. Let's see if we can go to Formula Fast again, do a bit of karting and a live show. But Matt, Ocon Corner. It's time for Ocon Corner. Nobody cares but Trumpets. We zoom in on Trumpets. He's the only one on screen. He's going to talk about Ocon now while we pour a drink and sleep.
And what we found out today was this was actually his last race for Alpine.
Crazy.
And the reason I've seen put forth is that apparently, because as we all know, he's going to jump immediately into the cockpit for Haas and do the testing after Abu Dhabi. Apparently, this was a deal done by Briatore to get Doohan in one race early, probably because Briatore wants to replace Doohan immediately with Colapinto, who probably isn't going to Red Bull now, but that's all speculation, so have fun with that, kids. But what I like about this is in the normal course of this race finishing, were it not for the safety car in the mirror, Magnussen would have been one place behind Gasly. And Haas would have been 1 point ahead of Alpine going into the last race. And guess who's not racing for them now? Yep, that's right. The guy who finished highest overall in the season and helped you take 6th place away from Haas temporarily. So I bring it up because I wonder, was this Briatore getting played a little bit by Haas and Ocon? Or were they so certain they were going to give him the terrible car that there's no way he's scoring points anyway, so it doesn't matter if Doohan's in it? So that's a discussion I want to have.
All I know is Oliver Oakes was interviewed immediately after the race by Formula One TV.
Yeah. And
when asked about it, he was like, well, I've been on the pit wall. I haven't heard anything about it. So this is obviously Briatore things going on in the background.
Yeah, it occurred to me that, maybe this was a long range Haas stratagem to help them maybe get 6th place away from Alpine, take away one of their 2 good drivers and put a rookie in instead.
All right. Well, do you know what? I think that brings us on to the podium. A surprising Qatar Grand Prix. I had low expectations and they were broadly met, but there was also excitement and drama. And do we value the soap opera, the storylines of Formula One as content creators and consumers of content? As Formula One fans, do we like hearing the soap opera? Do we like hearing that Russell and Verstappen don't get on? I think I do. I think I got a bit fed up with them all being pally-pally. But there's been rifts between Verstappen and Russell for a long time now. And the cracks in Norris and Verstappen's relationship and friendship are starting to open up as they feud in public about whether Verstappen would have won in Lando Norris's McLaren this season. But there was also some incidents, some on-track racing. And this is a regulation set that is robust enough to handle tracks that don't quite make it. So even on a track like this, which is just made for silly bikes that lean over and don't even fall down, as if by black magic.
Cooler than Formula E.
Well, we'll see. We'll see at the end of the season, right? Even on a track like this, that I don't fancy very much, this regulation set is robust enough to provide good racing. I still think Formula One is in a good state, and I think even Abu Dhabi is a track we can look at and go, well, these cars will probably provide us with some decent racing. And I'm really looking forward to next season. Fresh start, everything on the line again. And I think as much as we often have good racing towards the end of a regulation set, I am particularly optimistic about next season. So as we come to the end of this race review, it is time to give out some awards. So we want to end on a positive note, you see. So we're going to start on the negative thing.
Oh no, you missed the apex.
So, Kristian Pederson, you still refuse all advances on social media. You briefly pop up on there and then run away. You skulk and then return in numbers. You're like a frightened rabbit running from the critique of social media. Where stand you now, sir?
How's it all going on X, guys?
Well, it's pretty much a dumpster fire, but I'm all in. I mean, I'm part of what makes X terrible, so I'm still there.
You're his fuel, Spanish. I heard. Did you know that if you go up in the top, I think it's up in the settings app, and then down in the you can deactivate it. Like,
no, I'm there till the end. I'm like that violinist on the orchestra on the Titanic. I'm going down with the ship, but I am also on Blue Sky, which is very, very nice. Only one person has abused me on there so far.
I'm going to say my negative part about the race today is the overshadowing penalty, because something needs to be done about this race stewarding. And when it all comes down to it, at the top of the pyramid stands the head of the FIA. And with all the people that has been not only let go, but also people who's just been quitting during this year, there's something rotten going on there. But the most peculiar thing of those was that guy running the compliance officer called Paolo Basari, who was basically doing the research on the FIA director's participation in the Alonso penalty and stuff like that. He was let go. So and him being let go is something that is supposed to be approved by the FIA Senate.
Yeah, that's bad.
So it's not only what we hear, it's not only what we see, it's not only in race control, it's everywhere that is something bigger going on. And that is what I don't like. They need to fix this. This is big business. This is too big to have someone like that ruin it.
So, yeah, the person, Basari, that you mentioned there was investigating specifically the allegation that the Aston Martin, the pit lane thing where they touched the car too early, that was overturned because the FIA president marched down there and personally made sure that Alonso didn't get a penalty. And I think what I would say is there's presidential elections coming up. There's a system of patronage, basically. So, people, there's organizations around the world. They might be smaller racing organizations, but they get funding from the FIA and they have a vote. Now, there's a lot of news stories coming out about FIA funding towards these local groups. So I would just say keep an eye on that. And,
The thing is, Banners, each vote, even if you're from Luxembourg, your vote is the same as the one from the States, right? So if you just pay off the guy from Luxembourg, you're pretty well set, right? No.
If you were
hypothetically, if I was a bad guy not doing race things. Yes.
If you were a hypothetical bad guy, oh man, we're not
working in racing, doing things outside of sports. I would do it that way. But never in sports, because that's sports. You don't do those things.
Question: if F1 split from the FIA, they'd lose the name F1 Formula One. They'd lose it, wouldn't they? Yeah, I think so. I think the FIA have the right. So at least temporarily, they would lose it until they could wrestle it back from a broken.
But you know who
they
could buy GP1 from cheap? Bernie.
And if they want to hire some people, I know where to find some pretty good ones with recent experience.
You could, to be honest, you could call it Formula Vroom Vroom race cars, and I'd be all in. But at the moment, I'm so unhappy. Like, if I was introducing someone to this sport now and they saw that today, I would genuinely be like embarrassed to go, yeah, they couldn't pick up the wing mirror, and that decided the whole race that we've been sat here watching for 2 hours. So, yes, I agree with your Mr. Apex.
Just to add to the story, the guy who was let go this weekend was with FIA for 15 years as a volunteer. He was let go on a text by an assistant.
Tim Bayer?
Yeah.
Okay, Matt Trumpets, you are... Look, Matt, in my background... Oh, no, Matt. In my background, there you go. I've got the book there, your wife's book, The Fast and the Reckless, which is a mucky book about Formula One, where consenting adults in the world of Formula One look at each other and go, ooh, you're pretty / handsome. And
where chests are strapping and bosoms are heaving. Yes.
And things develop from there. Fast and the Reckless, link in the show notes below. It's doing very well anyway, but if you buy a copy of it as a Christmas present.
Yes.
Jeez, Christmas
we are in the gift-giving season, so please consider it either for distracting someone so you can watch the race yourself, or getting them interested so you can watch the race together. And I will say, I've heard from people who are not romance readers, but Formula One fans, they independently have enjoyed the book just as a Formula One book. So you do not have to be both things to enjoy it. You can be either one.
Okay, that counts as your plug. You don't get to plug your social media. Who missed the Apex for you? For you?
You know what? And I don't know if this is a team thing or not, but Hulkenberg.
Oh.
Just like it was an important weekend for Haas. They were 1 point up on Alpine, and just from turn one, his race went sideways, and he just didn't seem to be able to get it back. And it was it's problematic because now they've lost that 6th position. And I don't know. I was disappointed because Haas had put themselves in a good position for this race, and then it seems like they kind of threw it away.
And you Spanners, where can we follow you? Oh, wow, I've already said. Oh, I can plug it again. Okay. On Blue Sky, all the links are in the show notes below. Go and give my TikTok videos on the Missed Apex channel a go. And I'm also going to try and do like lives and stuff. So I'm just live chatting and hanging out there too. My Missed Apex award is going to go to Perez, isn't it? It's very hard. Can I ask one favor? I asked this on the Ringer. I'm going to ask this here. There's one race left. It's been a difficult season for Perez fans. All I'm going to ask is that when he goes out in Q1 in Abu Dhabi, can we just chill? Can we just not kick off and act massively surprised that he's gone out in Q1 again? We know it's going to happen. We know it's a high possibility. Just give me one race's grace of Perez went out in Q1. Oh, unlucky. Better luck in the race. Points are on Sunday. Why can't we say that to Perez? Points is on Sunday. You're all mean.
But you don't want an answer to that question.
I don't want an answer, no.
It's rhetorical.
No, let's do the thing of the weekend. All right, quickly then, we get to end on a positive. So, who is your thing of the weekend? Oh, I'm going to go first so that I can get the easy one. Zhou Guan Yu being very, very relieved to pick up points for Stake F1. I will say with Stake, if it had been a different season with less reliability, like an olden days Formula One season, Stake would have picked up the odd points. It's been a fairly unlucky circumstance that has had them being on donuts for most of the season, but they've got those points. And personally for Zhou Guan Yu and Bottas, they're both looking for future roles. He seems very positive about, he's in the contention for GM Cadillac as well. There's talks of him being in a Ferrari reserve driver role, which I will argue is still a pay driver position, but if you can secure it, that keeps you in F1. I don't think that's controversial, is it? That Ferrari Academy and Ferrari Reserve, I think they would come with a fee. I think those things would come with a fee.
Ferrari's pretty clever about that stuff. Yes.
And look, the Red Bull second seat comes with a fee, which is, I think, come as a big surprise to a lot of people.
I just want to add that Mercedes sells 700,000 cars in China every year. It's like 1/3 of their entire sales are in China.
Bottas is going to be their reserve, I think.
Yeah, but if you think about it, one Chinese driver, it could mean a whole lot for someone like Ferrari, for instance, marketing-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, not arguing that at all. And so, Kristian, who hit the apex for you?
Yuki Tsunoda was given a radio by his engineer when the mirror was on the track. And when he said there was a mirror, Yuki Tsunoda heard it as if there was a beaver. Yeah, but that is not what I'm liking here. The great thing about this was that he thought it was a beaver in Qatar because of global warming.
Is it?
Yeah, that's what he said. And I just think we should give this guy a restaurant now. I mean, let him have guests.
Lots of unintended consequences. Beavers in the desert.
But that is because I already talked about Magnussen, because Magnussen was my guy this race. I just love that kind of racing and combine that with the kart track. This is what we want to see in races, that kind of racing.
Still grateful for no poem. Still grateful for no poem from Kristian.
I'm only making poems when
Yes.
people stop racing. That is because Daniel Rick was stopping, right?
That's true.
We have a possible Bottas. We have a possible Ganu Joe. We have a Kevin Magnussen. That is going to be a big one. That is going to be
a
like
lot of
4
poems
chapters.
next season, kids.
You're going to end up in jail over that one. Matt,
Pretty much.
Trumpets at MattPT55 everywhere. Who hit the apex for you?
Well, I thought for sure I was going to have to do some last minute thinking because you let good old K-Ped go first here. But in fact, my thing of the weekend was not just Kevin Magnussen, but Kevin Magnussen on the radio when he finally passed Albon.
Oh, yes.
There's only one person that's better than Alonso on the radio, and I tell you now, it's Kevin Magnussen, who's now better than both Alonso and Norris in a single show. So there.
I loved hearing that passion. Thank you so much to my crew. If you could see the drama we went through pre-show to make sure we got Kristian on here, you'd be impressed that we made it over the line. If you could see the video and you could see the cool tips, the blonde tips he's put in his hair as a hark back to his TV star days in the 90s. Is it a TV comeback? It has to be.
Actually,
there's no reason to have hair
I was
like that.
white-haired when I did TV. I was orange-haired and blue-haired and stuff like that. So it is kind of a throwback.
Well,
I actually
like
also started releasing music as that same name from the 90s. So it all like fits together.
Wait, you've got new music coming out now?
I've just released 2 singles. I have a
haven't you
EP
told
coming
us?
out in January. But no, I'm no show-off.
Oh,
You will hear it.
You'd better send us those links. We've got to get those links.
I will.
Please.
When the EP comes out in January, I will promote it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And go and follow Matt, of course. And if you're not following me already, you are. I won't even bother. I'm the best one. You're already following me. So make sure you tune in for some midweek content. Who have we got? I think we've got Jules joining us for some midweek content with me and Matt. There's going to be loads to catch up on this weekend. There's loads of news that we've left on the table. And then in Abu Dhabi, we'll be in the shed, but we will have Matt, Antonia and Alex Van Gien joining us. Until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast. Everything that we do and say is your fault because you listen to us and encourage us and support us. We take very little responsibility. If you all went away, we'd go away too. Matt, you find that link. You find that link to Kristian. Search for Credit Music.